These are the stories of the people of Gaza. The people of Gaza that have been trapped. And that's what we were there to do, is try to break open that trap, try to stop that blockade, and the inhumanity that's being shown to the people of Gaza and to the people of the West Bank. Well, our two ships, the Challenger 1 and Challenger 2, left Crete. Within 12 hours, both ships developed steering problems. Strangely enough. Oh, thank you. I should know enough to carry Kleenex. Within 12 hours, both of our ships had developed virtually the same identical steering problems. Steering problems to the extent that both of the captains of both of the ships had to start steering with the engines, because we weren't going to go back to Crete. We were heading on no matter what. And as the captain would steer us with one engine going this direction, and then we would change, he would pull off that engine and push on the other one and go this way. We were a herringbone all across the Mediterranean trying to get to the meeting point where 4 other ships had already started. One of the ships, the Challenger 1, then took off and went to Cyprus to try to pick up some more of the parliamentarians from Scotland, from Cyprus, from the UK, who were waiting there to board the ship and come to the meeting point. My ship went to the meeting point and dropped us off on the Marvi Marmara, that ship that you saw, the one that was attacked. I was then on that ship for the next 48 hours, and I met lots and lots of people on that ship. I met many of the 450 Turkish citizens that were on the ship, many of them working for that humanitarian organization, IHH, but a lot of others from other Muslim and Arab countries that were on the ship. A lot of Europeans and a lot of journalists were on the ship, over 600 people on that ship. It was a very sophisticated ship. It was a ferry boat, a day ferry boat that plied the waters between the islands, the Turkish islands. It had 6 levels on it. It had eating facilities for 600 people. It had a studio, a press center on it that was set up by IHH, where we had banks of laptop computers that were hooked into a satellite system so that the over 70 reporters that were on board that ship could file their stories, and instantly those stories of talking to people all over the ship from all of these countries could be instantly sent out to the world. Videos of things that interviews they had done were going out on the internet immediately. And there was a television studio up on the bow of the ship, and perhaps many of you saw some of the interviews that were done on the bow of that ship. It was live time, it was live feed into the BBC, into Al Jazeera, into one of the major networks in Pakistan, and one in Indonesia, and one in Malaysia. Did any of you see any of those television feeds? Well, if you watch the internet, you could pick some of them up. It was very sophisticated. And it was the way that ultimately the world found out about the attack on the Marvi Marmara. I stayed on board that ship for 48 hours. I met lots of people on it. I met most of the women that were on it. You know, as is a custom in many of the Muslim and Arab societies, the women would have an eating area to themselves to kind of get out of the hubbub of what was going on the ship, and a place where women could sleep in the evening. And it was wonderful, because that was where I got to meet lots of women from Turkey, from Kuwait, from Indonesia, from South Africa, from all over the world, including including a woman who was from Turkey, from Adana, Turkey, who was a sportswoman as well as a humanitarian. She was a Taekwondo expert. Her husband was also on board. He was the coach of the national Taekwondo team of Turkey. He was one of the 9 people that were killed on the Marmara. It was very good to be with those women. I mean, finding out what had driven them to be a part of the flotilla. And it was also good to go all over the ship, seeing what was there, looking at all the cargo that had been inspected before any of the 6 ships, any of the 8 ships originally, had left their home ports, were inspected by international inspectors, because it was very important that the world knew that neutral eyes had looked into those cargo holds, had gone into all levels of the ship to look to see if there were any weapons, because we knew that that, of course, was one of the concerns of the Israeli government, and that we were not there to carry weapons. None of us would have been on a boat if that was the purpose of it. So it was out for our protection also, that all of the boats were inspected to ensure that there were no weapons on board. After 48 hours, and virtually at the time when the decision was made that the 6 ships that were now part of this flotilla would turn and head for Gaza, the last ship that joined the 6-ship flotilla was the Challenger 1. It had just come from Crete. The steering had been repaired, and several parliamentarians had gotten on board while in Crete. And those parliamentarians wanted to get off the smaller ship and onto the larger ship because there were parliamentarians from Israel, from the UK, the German parliamentarians were on board that ship. There were parliamentarians from other countries that they wanted to talk to. So they asked if 3 of us would come off the big ship and go onto the smaller ship. And I volunteered to do it along with 2 Australian reporters. Well, as we finished the offload onto the Challenger 1, the decision was that the ships would turn and move toward Gaza. And I'll tell you, it was on a beautiful, beautiful day in the Mediterranean, with the deep blue of the Mediterranean Sea and the setting sun coming off the water. It was beautiful to see all these 6 ships turn and slowly go toward Gaza, going at the speed of the slowest vessel, which was 8 knots. It wasn't like this was a speedy flotilla. This was a very slow-moving flotilla. At midnight that night, we started receiving radio calls from the Israeli naval forces saying, "You are approaching a security zone. Turn back, turn back. This is a closed zone. You have no authorization to go into it." And the radio operator would call each of the captains of the ships by name. The Israelis knew exactly who the pilots of the ship or the captains of the ship were. They knew exactly who the organizers of every organization was on all the ships because it was public. Most people had been writing articles about their participation on the flotilla because people were proud to be a part of an international citizens group that are saying to the Israeli government and to their respective governments that this siege of Gaza must end. So it wasn't like anyone was trying to hide the passenger list. And if Mossad is as good as it thinks it is, I'm sure that the passenger lists had been known for a long time to the Israeli intelligence agency. The captains of the ship each responded to the Israeli naval forces saying, "We are unarmed civilian ships carrying unarmed civilian activists on board. We are going to Gaza because we believe it is an illegal siege, a blockade that is strangling people in Gaza. It is our duty to do this." There were some other reports by the Israeli military that there were other voices that were coming on that were saying not so pleasant things. Howeida Arif, who was on our ship, was monitoring the radios all night long, and she said she never heard those transmissions. So one of the questions that we have for an international investigative team are the allegations that the Israeli military had that there were rather rude comments coming from some of the people on the ship. Is that really true?